Hello, everyone, and welcome to the joemotion podcast. So I'm delighted to be joined by my dear friend, Sohil Shah today. Sohil, it's so good to have you here, man. We've been having so many great conversations one-on-one that I'm absolutely buzzing to be able to have this conversation on the podcast, dropping some wisdom, some insight, some value for people. So thank you for being here, man. And for those of you who don't know you already, maybe if you could just introduce yourself and a bit about what you do.
Yeah, totally. So first off, where are you at currently?
I'm currently in the UK, but I'm heading to Southeast Asia on Tuesday. So
Oh man. All right. Well, that's something we got to talk about then. So I,
absolutely,
I
yeah.
I'm out in Seattle, and so we've had some good conversations, and we're halfway across the world, or even more. Who knows? So that goes to show that like we got some good stuff that even time zones can't keep it apart. So
Exactly, man.
yeah.
Worldwide.
Yeah, so at least for myself, I just graduated from college and currently I'm in a health and wellness coaching program. And so that's it's called the National Board of Health and Wellness Coaching. So I'm getting my license and that's something that I'm really excited to do. It's like some topic I'm really passionate about. Uh, I'm just going to be able to remind people of their potential and their goodness. And those are two things that I think in today's world, people there's a lot of distractions out there. There's a lot of people that try to tear you down. There's a lot of just obstacles. And so it's amazing what some support and some just an honest friend will do. And yeah, that's what it's all about. And so I'm just starting out, just growing, just learning all the coaching skills from some coaches who have been doing it for 30 years. And so I'm pretty involved in that passion right now. That's kind of my purpose. Otherwise, I love watching the Australian Open. I'm a huge tennis guy. So semifinals are tonight, so I'm pumped for that. Uh other than that, yeah, just 22, just graduated from UC San Diego, studied cognitive science and business and economics. So that's kind of two major subjects that I'm super interested in, and I hope I can bring those into my coaching with people. But yeah, just focused on improving people's lives and hopefully we can talk about some good ideas that improve the listeners' lives. And yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely, man. And you're not going to drop it in there because it's you, but just an overall legend, amazing guy. Want to add that to your portfolio as well.
Oh,
And for the people listening, to give them some context, we met at the men's retreat run by Jordan Candlish and Danny Gutierrez,
two
and
other amazing guys. Two other amazing guys.
absolutely. Go check those
Studs.
guys out. Jordan Candlish, Danny Gutierrez, just kings of that space and this men's work. We had a transformational experience over those 4 days. It was the most fun that I've ever had. And we just connected so well. And there was like, we were buddied up as accountability partners in that very first session. And we were like, yeah, I sense there's something here. Like there's a strong connection. So yeah.
Yeah, that goes to show. I mean, we were accountability partners, and it turns out we're both coaches and we're both on the same journeys. And I mean, we just naturally connect. It's crazy. For me, I felt alive there. Like it was just everybody was so present, so interested in one another, so interested in getting to know themselves. I mean, it was just like got to meet 20 cool dudes and just really grow. I mean, it was a special experience. So shout out to them. Shout out to you,
Yeah.
bro. I mean, it was people like you that came out. So I mean,
Yeah, it was it
it was a
was
great experience.
so good, so good. What do you think was the main takeaway that you got from that whole experience?
Hmm. There was so many. I literally on the plane ride home, I had a whole list of like 50 takeaways. Just one word, like one sentence takeaways that I this is it. And so I think they just got ingrained in me, but the main one is just to really like listen to that voice that comes from my heart and take some leaps on that. Don't over rationalize and over analyze things to keep you from doing things. I was in that mindset of overthinking a lot. And so what that retreat taught me was, dude, you got to listen to what's in your heart and then make some decisions, plan around it, but follow that voice. And so that's when I started the coaching program. That's when I said I'm gonna travel next year. That's when I'm gonna just really get out there more, meet a ton of people, and yeah, it's worked out for me. So what about
Right.
you?
That's so powerful. Just you saying that, I resonate that with that big time about following your heart and the importance of
Yeah.
doing that. I think that all of the best things in my life have always come when I've done that. And
Mm,
it's crazy because sometimes our brain tries to rationalize what our heart tells us to do. And we
mm,
talk ourselves out of doing things that are actually in true alignment with us. And for
yeah.
me, going to that retreat was a big heart alignment. I was like, I
Mm,
have to be there. And my brain was like, oh, it's expensive. It's all the way in the US. You've just come back from traveling and you're going somewhere else again, trying to talk me out of it. But something deep within me, my heart, just knew that I had to be there. And it was one of the best experiences I've ever had. And afterwards, I was like, I cannot even believe that I thought of not going to that.
mm,
And I think it's a real journey to be able to build that connection with the intuitive nature of our heart, because we become
mm,
disconnected to it over time so much, whether it's society, it's the media, if it's a school, parents, peers, whatever it is. We become so hyper focused on rationalizing and analyzing things that we forget to connect to our intuitive nature in our heart. And
mm,
yeah, that was a huge insight, definitely. I think for me, the biggest takeaway from that whole retreat is just the power of community and
mm,
coming together, not just in a space with other people, especially like-minded people, but with a shared intention. I think that is one of the most powerful things that we can do, especially individually as groups of men and individually as groups of women. I think there's a power in coming together with a collective intention in those spaces to grow, to develop, to connect, to collaborate, to co-create, all of these things. And it really does create this magical unit, this space between people that is just, it's unlike anything else you'll experience. And I don't know if it's the same for you, but whenever, throughout my teenage years and throughout most of my adult life, I'd seen groups of men acting in a way that wasn't intentional and that maybe wasn't in alignment with how I wanted to be. And I've seen the
mm,
complete flip side of that now at the men's retreat. And I think the world needs much more of this. It needs people coming together that are like-minded with a shared intention and working on themselves and then helping each other work on themselves. And it's that mutual support that is so powerful because we are always more powerful when we work together.
mm. Absolutely. That you brought up the idea in my head of like when we kind of, at least the friend groups that I have with all my guy friends, it usually doesn't center around what's important to us. It's usually around like hitting the bars or playing
Right.
sports or anything along that nature, but it's not too deep and it's not too intentional. And so that we got that community with other individuals and other men that really were focused on doing something that was important to them. And so, yeah, I mean, community inspired us in so many ways to like have different perspectives, hear from each other's stories, and like not feel alone. And we felt like we felt stronger as a unit, and we actually bonded. I mean, that's a beautiful takeaway. How can we keep doing that? That's what's going through my head. What's next?
Yeah. Yeah. And we got to keep creating those spaces, right?
Yeah,
It's interesting that you use the word bonded because it came to me this idea that when you think of an atom, when an atom shares electrons with another atom, it bonds, right? It
yeah.
and it's the same as human beings that are collections of atoms. We are
Mm,
when we're bonding with other people, we are literally, you can think of it, we're literally bonding with them. We're giving them hugs, um we're high-fiving, we're in
we're
groups
talking,
together.
we're talking.
Yeah,
Our own
sharing
minds are,
information, which is what
yeah,
atoms do when they bond. So I just
right.
find it so interesting that on the macro level, each of our atoms, form bigger structures by bonding together, and they create then something cohesive like humans. And it's the
Mm,
same with groups of people on a macro level. We bond with other people and we share information just like atoms do. And I find that so fascinating.
mm.
Yeah.
That almost comes at like such an important just word in general, which is just connection.
Mm,
Like if that could just be like a value or a something we live by and not let anything get in the way of.
mm,
Because what you're saying, like there are those connections at a micro level with just the way we're structured and from the very atoms. And then there's a connection between me and you. And that leads to something bigger. Like that leads to a new thing that's even more valuable that like what you were saying. And so, man, like it's amazing how isolated people are these days. And I myself was kind of in that mindset of I gotta do things on my own, and life is just completely flipped on its head after I went out there and talked to people like you, went to that retreat and got to hear all these new ideas, new perspectives. I mean, it's almost like that connection was what I was missing. And
mm.
so, yeah, man, like let that be an insight in itself to like, I think as human beings, that's like one of the reasons we're on this planet, whether it's through ideas or through just connecting our hearts and people, like that's what makes us feel like we should be here.
Wow. That's so powerful, man. Wow. And it's connection is such an all-encompassing word because
Hmm.
if our intention is connection, that means connection with ourselves, that
Hmm.
means connection with the people around us, connection with our
Hmm.
environment,
Hmm.
and connection with society. And it's
Mm.
something that we all need, especially in this day and age where technologically we are all so connected. When you think about it,
Mm.
we're having this conversation on other sides of the world,
Yeah.
but as a society in general, on an internal level, so many of us feel disconnected. And what is
Yes.
creating that disconnection? And I guess if we can go into each day with the
Mm.
intention of connection, then we're not only connecting more with ourselves, but that opens up the space to be able to then connect with others, and especially people that are like-minded, that have created that connection with themselves. And I think that one of the things that coaching can do is build connection. And when we talk about connection as well, it might be connecting with a future version of ourselves. It might be
Hmm.
connecting with a potential experience that could happen to us. It might be
Mm.
connection of neurons in our brain. That is literally what thoughts are. It's neural networks in the brain connecting, firing and wiring together to create new thoughts. It's creativity. And when you think about it, you know, we are all on a level, we are all connected. This is what quantum physicists are proving with quantum entanglement studies, right? Where they find that they fire
Yeah.
two protons together, and that they bond. And then even
Hmm.
if they send them to other sides of the universe, if you affect one, the other one is affected at exactly the same time, which means that no matter how far away they are in the universe, they are still connected. And so
Wow.
they're basically saying that there is some governing field that is faster than the speed of light, which means that we cannot see it, that is connecting all of us. And this is science is starting to catch up on what people have been saying in mysticism for thousands of years, which is that everything is connected.
Mm.
And when you think about it, we're across the world right now, but we are connected. And
Mm.
so, 100 years ago, people might not have felt connected to people across the world, even though on a level, on a universal atomic level, they might have been. And I guess what I'm trying to say here is just reaffirming your point that connection is so important and is something that is especially important because it's so missing in today's society on a lot of levels.
Mm. Oh my, that was brilliant. There are so many things that you just said that blew my mind. On the way that two protons can go across the world, I've never heard that, but I need
Yeah.
to read about that. Like that's
Look up
really cool.
quantum entanglement, and
Okay.
just quantum physicists to discover. It's science. It's widely accepted science that these protons, once they've been entangled, even if they're fired off to other distant places, they're affected exactly the same time.
Wow.
And so yeah, there's something connecting those. That means there's something connecting all of us as well.
Yeah. It's wow, it's beautiful. When I think about the problems in today's world of like why it's a struggle to connect, I think it comes down to this principle of authenticity and being able to be yourself. And I think there's a lot of things that hold people back from that. One of which is probably like why do people try to fit in or people please or do those things? And I think probably there are a lot of reasons for that. Like one is probably trauma, and there's a huge kind of focus on healing and what that means and re-establishing that connection with yourself or myself. And that's how we can go out and be those authentic humans in connected groups again. Because something that can happen a lot is we're connected over social media, but we're connected over the best parts of us, the highlight reel. But then it's not like who we are, the ups, the downs, the failures, the mistakes. Like none of that is being connected over. Like we all go through that alone. And so when we go back to hanging out with people, that's where we kind of throw it out. And like none of that happened, that sort of thing. And and it's crazy because deep down we know like our whole history, and it's something that we need to be proud of. We need to grow to love. And that's actually our biggest like strength because that's how we can connect with people. It's the stories like the retreat. And we didn't the retreat wasn't about like, yeah, I graduated college, man. I'm super interested in this. No, I was like, who are you? Where have you come from? What makes you you? And so those are questions that they're uncomfortable, but I think holding that safe space, that was key, where we weren't judging, we were very open to each other, and we treated each other like we know ourselves deserve to be treated. And so it was almost like having that treatment from another person in a good way meant that we could treat ourselves in a good way.
Mm.
And I feel like that's when we have that, that's kind of what we've been missing. And that's what I've been doing, where it's like forgiving myself, nurturing myself, encouraging myself like I would my kid or like I would a best friend. And so that's kind of that's building that connection that's I think a lot of it comes down to embracing seeing the good in seeing the good in everybody, and that goes into another point of like your perception really controls your experience, and the more you focus on the good, the more good things happen. And so
Mm.
it's like, what's the choice that you want to make? It's like that comes down to a whole different level of things. I could keep going, but
Wow,
like,
so much
but
wisdom dropped in there. This is why I was so excited to have that
yeah,
conversation, this conversation right now, because so much to unpack in there. I absolutely love it. The first thing that you mentioned was authenticity, and
yeah,
so important. And I think for some reason, many of us throughout our lives have come into this place where we are not our full authentic selves. Because,
mm,
as you said, it might be trauma, it might be experiences where, in order to fit into a certain situation, whether it's work, personal, familial, or relationship, we've
mm,
had to be someone else in order to be accepted. And as a result,
mm,
we've taken on that persona of who we think we should be for those other
mm,
people. And as a result, we've lost our authentic self and we don't even know that we're doing it because it's become so habitual. And there's this quote that says, I don't know if you've heard it before. It says, I am not who I think I am. I am not who you think I am. I am who I think you think I am. So our perception of ourselves is based on what we think other people think we are. So we've
yes,
we've kind of got this thing where we're constantly tweaking and changing who we should be in order to be accepted and to fit into certain groups or with other people. And we lose touch, we lose connection with that authentic part of ourselves that and as a result we end up hiding ourselves, we end up covering ourselves up,
mm,
and it's a mask, right? When you're wearing a mask, you're covering something up. And
mm,
I think that the process of becoming authentic is discovering, taking away all
mm,
of those things that are covering up who you are as an authentic person. And as you said, asking yourself those questions: who am I? And asking yourself, who am I really? And how can I be that more? Because
mm,
there's always a more authentic version of you to be. Always, always, always.
mhm,
You can
mhm,
always express that in a stronger way. And we have to ask ourselves those questions, just like you said. And who am I really? And
mhm,
how can I be more of that? And I think as well, creating an external environment that is conducive to that is so
Mm,
important. And that's where coming together in, groups like men's groups or women's groups, where these safe containers and spaces to be ourselves. Like,
mm,
this was where my journey started. So I went to an ecstatic dance in Southeast Asia when I was 19,
mm,
and I was just, for those who don't know what ecstatic dance is, you can just dance however you want. And so people are so expressive and so authentic there. And at this
oh,
point, I was still so conditioned. I was still so in this matrix conditioning, as people would say. And I was just like, what does everyone think of me? Are they judging how I dance?
yeah.
And at some point through that, I just stopped. I was just like, I'm just gonna dance how I want and see what happens. And eventually I realized that nobody cares. And even if they did care, why should I care what they think? Because I'm being me. And that was
Mm,
the start of a whole journey for me. That was 5 years ago. But it is a constant process of discovering, removing all of that BS that is covering up who we really are on the inside. You made some amazing points there, man. Thank you for sharing that.
thank you for sharing your story. I mean, that makes sense why you are where you are today. Like you're out here spreading your voice, spreading your ideas that are really unique. That's why you're going to men's retreats and following your heart. I mean, that's pretty cool that it
Yeah.
started and
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 it,
you
it
know
took me a
where.
while. It took me a while. So
Yeah.
after that, I went back into working in the film industry for like another few years, and I was
Uh-huh.
slogging away, and I was slowly, gradually discovering myself. And then lockdown happened,
Mm.
and more of myself suddenly started coming out. And at some point, I was like, you know what? Like, following my heart again, it comes back to this connection with our heart. I was like, I have got to go traveling, and I don't know when I'm
Mm.
coming back. Best thing I've ever done. That was like over 2 years ago. Had the most amazing time, and every opportunity I've tried to be guided by my heart. Of course, I fail, not fail. I fall off the wagon sometimes, and slip into a place of ego or a state of something that doesn't serve me. But it's about bringing it back to
Mm.
what matters to you and your values ultimately, I think.
Mm. And it seems like when you say bringing that back, that brings me to exactly what meditation's like and mindfulness. Like I just like you're almost aware of who you're being. And so
Right.
you're aware of when you slip. And so you can bring it back
Yes.
to, and that's the key, like just being aware of, yeah, of how you want to be. And the way that can happen sometimes is COVID or it's like sitting with yourself and having that space. And it's amazing how it's not a choice of what comes up, but it's almost like it just happens. And then you just trust that, like, yeah, this is me. Like
Yes.
at least that's how it's worked for me, where like I'll be having a normal night and then or in the shower always, and these ideas will come of like, you gotta go do this. And I feel like who said that? Where'd that come from? You know, and those are the insights to like dive into. I mean, there's a whole yeah, I mean, intuition and dreams and man, it's but back to what you were saying of I want to bring myself back to you were talking about acceptance and fighting like changing for the approval of others, and that's exactly what as human beings we just want to feel accepted for who we are, and we'll do anything. We'll hit the gym to get freaking huge. I've done that. And or we'll go make a ton of money. It's amazing how we will fight and fight and fight just to feel like we have that group where we can just be ourselves. And so that when you said that word of acceptance, that was like, wow, that's exactly what we're looking for. And if I can give that to myself and give that to other people for who they are, it's almost like they'll treat me in that same way. And that's kind of how we can break those layers and take those off of like, oh yeah, you're making six figures and you're doing, oh yeah, like let's talk about that instead of like, so when your head hits the pillow, like what's on your mind or
Mm,
that sort of thing. Like it's all, yeah. And with conversations like this, we're completely going off the rails of like something that like in a normal conversation on a day-to-day basis, there just wouldn't be the space for this. There's just so much to
yeah.
do always. And so I mean, setting time for this. It's look at what's coming out. I mean, it's pretty cool.
Absolutely. It's so important to make time for this. And with what you mentioned about how sometimes we need something to almost create that self-awareness, like you said, it was COVID, or even just daily through meditation. I think the common theme there is it's a pattern interrupt, because it's so
Mm,
easy as human beings to slip into our own programs. Like our brain works just like a computer because we've modeled the computer off of our brain. And as you know, we run programs every day. It's the reason that we can sleep and walk and talk, all of these
hmm
things that our body can do so easily because we've done it so many times. And so programs are really important for us as human beings, but we have to become aware when there is a program that we are running that might not be serving us. And the
mm,
only way to do that is to stop and take time to work on our self-awareness so that we can stop the program, stop the pattern interrupt, and just like a software engineer updates a piece of software so that it can run better, we need to do that. We need to take time to stop and update our own neurological, physiological software so that we can run well. You ever feel like you're like an iPhone that is needs an iOS update and it's super slow and you can't
yes,
access apps and it's not working? It's the same
yeah,
with us. If there's
mm,
something that we need to update, something that we need to tweak, our body's going to give us signals that that's the case, whether that's
mm,
fatigue, burnout, stress, resentment,
mm,
anger, or slipping into these states. That is a sign that there is something we need to become aware of, a program or a pattern that we are running that we need to get in the middle of and interrupt.
mm,
We need that pattern interrupt. And like you said, sometimes it happens to us inadvertently. COVID, um, when we're in the shower, there's that
yeah,
intuition that's telling us you're running a program here that might not be helpful for you. It's so important to make the time to do it, to say, right, I'm going to introspect, reflect, look inwards, and become the observer of the program that I'm running rather
mm,
than being the program and being at the whim of that program. And again, that's why I think meditation is so important. I don't know what your
mm,
journey is with
mm,
meditation, but in terms of creating that self-awareness, there's
mm,
few things out there that beat it, in my opinion.
mm. So two things you said that have to be elaborated on because they were brilliant. When you talk about being the observer of something, that is something that could. Have you ever like watched a TV show and the first episode and you're like really analyzing what's going on? You're looking at the characters, looking at the jokes, and it's all like you're watching the TV. And then
Mm.
after the movie goes on and you start to get a little more just emotionally drawn in and invested or kind of tired and detached, it's almost like the movie's just happening now and you're almost in the movie and it's just creating all these like your stomach's in turns and then all of a sudden you're feeling ecstatic by the end of the movie and then you walk out like oh like all of a sudden you have no idea what happened, like you can barely even talk about like what you noticed like about themes. It was just like wow, that was just a delivered all these emotions and now it's over.
You get
And
swept
it
up, right?
you get swept up.
Yeah.
And so that's exactly what meditation does. It takes you from that mind that is that movie and it goes on these thoughts and it doesn't stop. And for a lot of people, and we're able to, in meditation, see actually the thoughts that go by, just like that TV show. And when we can see them, that's when we can inspect them and treat them in a different way. And so when you said like anger, resentment, those negative kind of things that we're scared of almost that we think are negative, so they shouldn't be there. Those are signals, like you said, of like, this is where your attention should go. And so simply having that awareness of like, oh, this is my body trying to help me out to like at least just be aware of something. That completely changes the habit of like, man, I'm feeling bad. I gotta go feel better. I gotta go do something else. Um,
That's an amazing analogy,
yeah,
man. And you know what? I've never heard that before, but you're so right. You get swept up into at some point you're like, okay, I'm watching a TV series, I'm watching it, and then suddenly you're in it and you come to the end and you're like, whoa, what just happened? Like you said.
yeah,
And they're
yeah,
called TV programs. It's exactly the
ah,
same. It's
yeah,
the movie of our life. We either get to be an
mm,
observer of it and we get sucked into it and sucked into whatever the director wants to make us feel, or we get to say, how do I want to feel in any given moment? We get to be the directors, the writers of our own movies,
Wow.
our own programs.
Right there, you just said you get to be a director of how you feel. And that was the biggest. I saw this quote the other day that don't act based on how you feel, but act based on how you want to feel.
Oh,
And so, like, when it comes to life or when it comes to seeing a situation or thinking, even, you can literally choose to think based on how you want to feel. Let's say I want to feel confident. Okay, what actions do I need to do to feel confident? Thinking in terms of that, or what, like what you just said, is it changes lives. I mean, it all of a sudden there's a choice, uh, rather than constantly being torn around by. And it's always the negative things that we tend to like focus on because we want to protect ourselves or learn from things or all of that. And so, yeah, I mean, yeah, that's a choice that it couldn't. If there's somebody listening right now, it's like go dive into how you want to feel and then go act based on that. Let's say you want to feel more healthy. Like what are the actions? Just focus on the actions. You may not feel like doing it, but just think of how you're going to feel after. And that's almost enough motivation for like when I talk to a coachee and that comes up, it's like, "Oh, like you know what? Like yeah, I do want to feel that." All of a sudden it's I want to. It's not like I don't want to, but it's like I want to go do
right.
that. And then they're motivated to change and that's kind of yeah, I love it because we're both inspiring people to change and that's it's hard, but it's so fulfilling and it's like it's what we're here to do. Uh, it's what we're here to do. Yeah.
I love what you just said. I think highlighting the emphasis of action is so important because
Mm,
we go from a state of human beings of thinking to doing to being. The thoughts that we
mm,
have create the actions that we take that become our personality. And
mm,
if we want to become a new person, we have to take new actions. And that starts with new thoughts. We can only have new thoughts if we become aware of the old thoughts that we don't want to have anymore
mm,
and switch them up. And it's then that you get to say, what do I want to do? What actions do I want to take? And who am I going to become in that process? And when it
mm,
comes to changing your beliefs about yourself and what you are capable of, there is nothing more powerful than doing it, proving to yourself that
mm,
you are capable of doing it. You can think all you want. Affirmations are great for the initial stage of the process. But until you
mm,
actually put it into action, your body's not going to believe it. It's not going to accept it to be the truth. And until it does that, you're not going to become that person. And I think that, like you said earlier, we chase these goals sometimes. We want to earn a certain amount of money, have a certain amount of fame or acceptance from other people, or a certain social status. But as you know, I'm not putting those things down, but I don't think we should be so focused on doing those things and achieving those things, but we should be focused on who we are becoming in the process. We're
mm,
becoming a person that is authentic so that
mm,
other people want to connect with us. We're becoming a person that is educated and wise and clear headed so that we can put ourselves in
mm,
a situation to be able to generate more financial wealth for ourselves. It's all about who we are becoming. And that starts with our thoughts and our actions. And it's the accumulation of those actions that, give feedback to us about who we actually are. And we can change that. And it starts with the thoughts and the actions. And that becomes our state of being ultimately.
mm. And and you literally have cracked the code. So it starts with your thoughts, goes to your actions, and once the actions change, then things can really change. And so even before the thoughts comes a perception of like that like how do I see this? Like there's a choice in there of like like choosing what to put your perception on where
Yeah.
that can influence the thoughts you have. And so that's what meditation does, where it's like that's channeling the awareness and the perception and you become aware of a thought and then that's when things can change and focusing on who we want to become in the process. That is like our destiny or our character, that the culmination of all of this good work that we do and that turns into our habits and then our habits and we know why Atomic Habits is such a huge book because that's what really channels into like who we become. And so we're all on that journey of like becoming our best selves. And so it's amazing that so last night I was on Instagram and Instagram Reels was throwing me some wisdom as always. And so it was like Tim Bilu or Tom Bilu. He has I forgot what
Can't
his
feel you.
podcast. Yeah, Tom Bilyeu. Yeah,
Yeah.
and he was saying that basically he sold his company and he checked his bank account. All of a sudden, he had a ton of money, but he realized he still feels the same about himself. He still feels insecure, and so he's like, well, like I still got some work to do. And so he realized, and I really resonated with what he said, is like the real thing that matters is how you feel about yourself when you're by yourself.
Mm,
And so that is all about, yeah, who am I becoming? Who am I? And like he said, like you want to be somebody who's worthy, like worthy of your own respect, or think about like what is worthy of my respect, and then become that. That is almost like the answer to who you want to become, like Joe, or who the listener Andy wants to become. It's like, what does Andy respect? Like if Andy thinks it's worthy of respect too, that's where these societal things start to get picked away of like, you know what? Yeah, I respect a guy who has money, but I respect a guy who works hard. And then,
mm,
you know, I respect a guy who works hard, but I respect a guy who like is there for his loved ones. And I
mm,
respect a guy who's there for his loved ones. And I respect a guy who's there for himself so he can be best for his loved ones. And so it's almost like you get away from the societal things that like it's like the outcomes or the results that we all see, and we get to like the true things of like oh, that's what I really respect in another person. Once you find that and you become that, it's like all of a sudden that comparison that I mean I dude I compare to people, and that goes away when I'm focused on am I just have I defined what I respect.
mm.
And like to what you're saying about who we could be and becoming that that's something that it gives direction when we can define it. I'm sure you've probably defined your own version of like who Joe wants to be,
Mm.
and like that's what gets you up in the morning. That's what guides your actions. And so like yeah, like I mean
Yeah,
that's
you. I think we so many good points there. So many good points, and I totally resonate. I think that there needs to be some kind of vision for who we want to become to give us that direction to be able
mm,
to work towards. I think
hmm
as human beings, we are inherently wired to evolve. That's why we've evolved to this space from single-celled organisms millions of years ago.
hmm
It's a constant state of evolution. And as a result, if we want to evolve intentionally, we have to have an intention about where it is that we want to go.
hmm
And what you said that was I resonate with so much is you said asking yourself, what do I respect? And what came up for me there is our values. I think
mm,
that as a society, we would be so much more intentional and so much more clear if we were all clear on what our core values are. The
mm,
thing is, we've allowed society, the media, our family, our friends, our teachers, our peers to dictate our own values. And so we end up asking questions about our life and trying to answer them that are not even in alignment with our values. We might
mm,
end up trying to earn as much money as possible, only to realize, like Tom Bilyeu did, that we're not fulfilled. And what we actually want is fulfillment. What we really want is
mm,
wholeness. What we really want is freedom. Those are
hmm
our values. And we should be working towards those
hmm
instead of the bridge that it might get us there, which could be money, it could be a certain career, it could be a certain relationship. Those are great things that are the bridge, but we need to cross that bridge. We need to not just worship the gate, but enter the temple. What is that value that we want to work towards? What is that ideal of the life and the person that we want to become? And we have to continually work towards that. But working towards that requires getting clear on exactly what that is and why we want to work towards it. And it's only through that inquisition, that self reflection, that introspection that we can actually get clear on what that ideal is.
mm. I got shivers just now. That was wow. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, you said it perfectly. Like if one person could do that, imagine the change for them. Like
Yeah.
like that alone. And then imagine if a society was able to, like, man, I'm just thinking about the presidential election coming up. Imagine if there were like values that he was like proposing that everybody could stand on, even Republicans or Democrats, at least in the US, right? It's
Yeah.
different in other countries, but man, like we're all human. Like
Mm.
the values don't have to be like taxes and uh you know what I'm saying? Like
Capitalism or
yeah,
socialism.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Like okay, I get that like economies have to run, people have to I mean people have to have wealth, but um I mean also people want those human desires, man. Like so like yeah, fulfillment. You said it perfectly. We want fulfillment. We want freedom. We don't want like $1 million. We want freedom.
Yeah.
We or
Right.
yeah, so man, it's just yeah, that's it's good to
Yeah.
at least be mindful of like these things rather than like live away a life and not ever come to these like realizations. It's amazing how like it can be satisfying to start winning in the race of society of like, yeah, I'm making more wins, money or like and those aren't bad. Those are helping you on maybe goals that are important to you. But a lot of times people can still feel a little bit of emptiness inside.
Right.
And so that's where they just got to look inside and it's not as fun, it's not as enjoyable at first, but yeah, that's something where as a coach like that's something I can tell that like a client would benefit from, but sometimes they may not be ready for it or interested. And so that's where I'm still learning on, let's say like I'm sure you were taught that as a coach it's best to have the client come to their own realizations because they're the expert on their own life. And
Yeah.
that's something that like we believe that they are whole in who they are. And so yeah, it's like yeah, like understanding that, but also like man, if there was some introspection to like what your values are or like truly like who is Dominic, like then yeah, that's where the change really happens of like waking up every day feeling and ending the day fulfilled and not on Netflix, but like actually,
Yeah.
you know, you get everything done and then you end up on Netflix, you know, whatever. But yeah.
Yeah, I think a big part of this is it comes down to the questions that we ask ourselves.
Mm,
And sometimes we might have been watching the same show on Netflix, and then we get 10 shows in and we think, why am I watching this? And it's exactly the same in life. We might go through a phase of the
mm,
equivalent of 10 Netflix episodes in our life, and then get to a point and be like, why am I doing this? And that
mm.
question is something that
Wow.
we have to delve into and we have to go deep into because there is gold there. But the thing is that so
Mm,
many of us are disconnected from our intuition that when that question comes up that says, why am I doing this? We ignore it or we push it down and we continue the same
mm,
program. We binge watch the same next, the next series of our life on the same program, even though it's not fulfilling to us. But
mm.
life comes in cycles and we get the opportunity again, the end of the next series that we've been
Yeah.
watching of our life or Netflix, whatever it is, where we get the opportunity to say, why am I doing this? But this time we might say, it's actually a really good question. I'm not sure why I'm doing this. Maybe I'm doing this to impress other people. Maybe I'm doing this to gain social status. That's not really in alignment with who I am. And that gives us the opportunity to ask new questions where we get to say, all right, what are my real values?
Mm,
What is the ideal life that I want to live? Who do I want to become? And that is a
mm,
whole new path. That is a whole new Netflix series. That is a whole
mm,
new set of programs that is going to create a whole new reality for you. And it really starts with asking yourself new questions. And
mm,
it's actually the book that I'm writing at the moment is all about
mm.
this. So
Yeah.
I'm
Tell.
excited to be releasing that in a couple of months. It's all about the questions that we're asking ourselves and how we answer them and how that defines our life. So
Mm,
once the book comes out, we'll have to do another episode talking about that in particular. But it's enough to say that it really does start with the questions that we ask ourselves because we all do it
mm,
constantly on a daily basis. Right now, I'm thinking, what is the next thing I should say? I'm not consciously thinking that, but I am in every moment.
mm.
And you might be thinking, okay, what is Joe saying? I've received. What should I listen to? Should I,
Yeah.
respond? What should I say next? These are all questions, and all of us are doing this infinitely in every single moment. And the questions that we ask ourselves and how we answer them determines our experience of life. So if we want to have a
Mm,
new experience of life, we have to ask new questions and new answers. If we want to
mm,
have an aligned experience of life, we have to ask aligned questions and aligned answers. If we want to have a happy life, we have to ask questions that are related to happiness and answer them. And it's really as simple as that, asking yourself new questions and choosing a new answer. And it
mm.
links back to what we said about thoughts, feelings, and actions and being, right? When you're thinking, that's the question. You're asking something. The
Mm-hmm.
action is your answer to it. And so
Mm.
change the question, change the thought, and then change the answer, the action in response to
Mm.
that. And you will create a new state of being. And when you create a new state of being, you're creating, as Dr. Joseph Spencer says, a new personality. When you create a new personality, you create a new personal reality. So if
Mm.
you want to ultimately create a new reality, a new Netflix series for your life,
Yeah.
starts with creating your personality, which starts with your thoughts, beliefs, behaviors, actions, habits, programs, all of that stuff. And that is new questions and new answers. So that's what I'm writing the book about.
Well, whenever that book comes out, you send me a copy, please.
Absolutely, absolutely. You'll be the first to get it.
That is I mean, wow. That's a book that it like listening to that voice and honing in on that voice and keeping that voice being one that leads to answers that are that are important quality. Like, it's amazing how the same answers can come up and we still just act on them. And so
Mm,
it's amazing what a new question can do. And that's almost what, like, when you're around new people, they ask new questions.
right.
And that's almost like it's almost like, yeah, I do feel like a new personality when I'm around you, or when I compared to my parents, right? Because
Mm,
they've seen me forever and they don't ask me new questions. They see me based on that personality of like the kid I was, 10 years ago. And so it's amazing that it's almost like a rebirth when, yeah, you asking a question, and it's the reaction's beautiful because it can be a positive question and then a positive answer comes.
yeah.
And then from there, I mean, yeah, I'm fascinated in the ideas that you come up with and the questions that you come up with. And
Yeah.
oh
And it's what
man,
we do as
what a
coaches, right?
what a
That's
yeah,
literally
yeah.
the main part of our job is asking the right questions. And I think that sometimes the reason we get stuck in life or we get caught in downward spirals is we're just asking misaligned questions. We're
Mm,
asking questions that are not in alignment with the path that we need to go on. We might have been asking ourselves the same question for however long. We might have been saying, how can I earn $1 million for the last 10 years? When really the question that's in most alignment with us is, how can I be happy right here and right now? And
mm,
once we realize that, we ask that new question, it is a whole new experience of life. So
mm.
anybody that's listening, please ask yourself new questions. Take the time to sit down, meditate, reflect, journal, get a coach, ask yourself questions, ask others questions, bounce them off each other. Ask new questions because you will get new answers and you will have a new experience of life. And that's opportunity. New experiences is where opportunity lies. It's
Mm.
unknown, it's possibilities, and there's infinite possibilities out there. You get to choose.
And that's what makes life worth it.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And this work is difficult sometimes, but it is so worth it. Like you
Mm,
say, it's that you get that sense of fulfillment from life. That is really what it's all about. And it's so worth the inner work that it takes to break through those patterns and those programs and give yourself the software update you need.
mm.
Yeah. I guess all of this comes down to connection, which is what we started with, right?
That is that's almost like the end product of all of this. Like, it's
Mm,
the end product of meditation, the end product of defining your values, the end product of figuring out what aligns with you, asking questions. Like, you have a connection to an action. Like, yeah, I'm choosing to do this. You have a connection to a destiny in your life that you came up with, or you have a connection to something that you really want, and other people have the same desires, and you're connecting over that. You're connecting over a podcast over your ideas. I mean, it's everywhere. And it comes back to what's worth it in life. And that's like, if it just, it feels really fulfilling, to be able to end up with that connection, whether it's loved ones, whether it's with your spouse, with your relationship, parents, friends, yourself. I mean, it's a beautiful thing to work towards. And yeah, I mean, there were so many other insights. I'm glad we recorded this. I'm
Yeah,
so glad we recorded this.
let's definitely do this again. I feel
Yeah,
like connection is such a great way to wrap this up. You know, the connecting from the beginning to the end. And I hope that everyone listening has got some insight. You know, you've dropped some amazing wisdom bombs in here, and it's been such a great conversation. So I just want to say thank you so much for joining me, man.
dude, thank you, man. I mean, you're brilliant, wise, have so much just knowledge, and most of all, you're authentic, and you're open, you're honest, and so, I mean, I appreciate that, and all the listeners do, and to the ideas of the listeners, I mean, it would be just as valuable to hear their perspectives on if
Yeah.
this stuff resonates with them, and so that's something
Yeah.
that would be totally interesting too.
Yeah, first of all, I appreciate you, man, and straight back at you. So wise, so insightful, so clear-minded, and I'm really grateful for this conversation. And I'd love for people with insights on it as well. So anyone that's listening, come over to social media. I'll leave the links in the description for this podcast. Let me and Sohail know what you thought of this episode, and we'll continue the
Yep.
conversation over there. And thank you so much again, man. Thank you for being you. And I'm already looking forward to our next conversation, our next collaboration.
Wow, thank you for being you. Let's end it on that. That's beautiful, man.
Absolutely. Appreciate you, man.
All
Thank you.
right.